On October 10th at 7:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a tweet appeared on a local ABC syndicate in South Carolina, and it read, "Donald Trump claimed a rigged election" on Twitter after learning about the mistake in Ohio's Franklin County that led to nearly 50,000 absentee ballots to be sent to the wrong voters. 8 minutes later, a Fox syndicate in Texas posted the exact same tweet. And 4 minutes later, another ABC syndicate, this time in Virginia, did the exact same thing. And if you're sensing a pattern here, these tweets from 2 NBC syndicates in Nevada probably won't surprise you, nor will these ones from NBC, CBS, or Fox syndicates from around the country. Something that might surprise you, the engagement on these tweets. I mean, these are really small local market news stations, essentially. It's your local weather. It's the guy that says back to you with the sports. And honestly, their engagement on social media gets 1 like, maybe 2 retweets, except for one. And this one got 5,000 retweets and 16,000 likes almost immediately. And if you're wondering why, it's because the President of the United States retweeted it. And this isn't some local media strategy from the president, and it's not the only Twitter interaction between the president and some random news station in the middle of Virginia. Between October 8th and 12th, Donald Trump retweeted ABC 13 News 5 times and quote tweeted them twice. Now, the coverage isn't actually news. So instead of saying, Donald Trump tweeted that the election might be rigged or fraudulent, and here are the facts that you need to know that vote by mail is not rigged or fraudulent, they just retweet what the president said and say that it's news. It's not. It's just disinformation and amplification of disinformation. The president's retweeting a random news station in Virginia, not because it's random at all, but because it's part of a larger media syndicate that goes across the country. And that's a media syndicate that you may never heard of, but it has one of the most significant audience reaches across the United States. It's called Sinclair Media Group. And it owns a lot of these local news stations and radio stations across the country, which means while it looks really trustworthy because it's the local weather guy or the local news guy, it actually is written nationally by somebody probably in Washington, D.C. or New York, and it's masquerading as local news. David D. Smith, the executive chairman of Sinclair Media Group, once told Donald Trump that we are here to deliver your message. And to his credit, they have. The thing about their reporting and social media presence is that it casts Donald Trump and his supporters as victims. And again, Sinclair's reach is so vast that it can drown out any other message. But these network-wide, largely unchecked Sinclair stories do more than just muddy the waters of an already hostile election. They announce to their audience, which makes up 39% of United States citizens, that vote by mail can't be trusted. And that argument has clearly caught on among Trump supporters because Donald Trump keeps telling it to them.
I think mail-in ballots is not going to be fair because it leads to fraud and stuff.
But the president himself uses mail-in ballots.
Oh, he does? Where?
That's how he votes. He mails it in.
That's different.
This year, 75% of Americans, or 3 in 4 Americans, are eligible to vote by mail. And that's really significant because this election is happening, unlike any other election in United States history, in the middle of a pandemic. Sowing doubt about vote by mail, it isn't some genius play by Donald Trump. In fact, a lot of Republicans would like to vote by mail, and typically they do. But this disinformation about vote by mail has limited the trust and could potentially have a secondhand effect of limiting his voter base. And so this strategy banks on the fact that his supporters will just take him at face value for whatever he says and believe him on a Tuesday when he says vote by mail is fraudulent, but still vote by mail on Wednesday when he says, oh, but if you support me, you totally should. The thing about vote by mail disinformation is that it's the precursor to a narrative that Donald Trump has put out in every single election that he has been in, which is that the election is rigged. Every single election that Donald Trump has run in, including the 2016 primaries and the 2016 presidential election, and now this election, he has called that election rigged. And if you're wondering why he keeps calling elections rigged, even the ones that he wins, it's an insurance policy. Part of the strategy of calling an election rigged in order to rig it is pre-delegitimizing the results of the election. Where Democrats are more likely to vote by mail, Republicans are slightly more likely to vote in person, which means we could face a moment on election night where the results that are available, or the votes that have been counted that day, will be those who voted in person, a majority of Republicans. And the danger in pre-delegitimizing the election is that Donald Trump will use that moment to claim victory without any basis in fact, and before all of the votes are counted. And that is disinformation. Sometimes the disinformation begins with Donald Trump himself, maybe on Twitter, maybe at the podium of the White House or the briefing room, or maybe at an election event where he's gesturing like crazy in front of a really, really large audience. But spewing disinfo about the legitimacy of the election, mail-in ballots, the evil Democrats, whatever, all of these narratives, you get the gist. But after that, right-wing spin machine goes to work. It amplifies itself and it's mutually reinforcing. Again, they point to each other to tell this story and reach a lot more people. So in this case, Sinclair Broadcast will cut some clips and then put them on air all over the country. And then maybe they'll post a Twitter poll or a bunch of headlines quoting the president without contextualizing whether what he said was factual or not. And then Fox News will run an opinion piece marketed as news that Trump is actually right. And then Tucker Carlson will have a whole segment on it for 3 nights in a row. You get the picture. It's an ecosystem that reinforces itself, and they take their cues from the President of the United States. But sometimes the President of the United States takes his cues from them.
I watched Lou Dobbs last night, Sean Hannity last night, Tucker last night, Laura. I watched Fox and Friends in the morning.
Sometimes the President of the United States is at the end of the supply chain of disinformation. And at the end of that supply chain of disinformation, he has the largest megaphone. And that is really scary, really effective, and really reinforces this information ecosystem which Trump supporters live in. This disinformation would be somewhat absurd and funny if it wasn't so harmful. Not only does it undermine the trust that we have in our system of government, but it also carries the real potential for things that happen in the real world. For instance, when the President of the United States pops off and says, "Stand by" to the Proud Boys, they take that literally. And the Proud Boys are not some group that is just tweeting. They are beating the shit out of people in the streets.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen.
We've gone over a lot of bad news and false news, but here's some good news. A lot of this misinformation about vote by mail is not working. 79% or 4 in 5 Biden voters have confidence that their ballot, regardless of how they cast it legally, will be counted correctly. And 71% of Trump voters say the same thing. But even better than that, voter enthusiasm in this election is at an all-time high, which could make all of the difference as we're getting the results on election night and in the days or weeks after the election. The bigger and more enthusiastic the turnout, the more concrete the results will be. Unfortunately, the reality in 2020 in America is that there are a lot of people that either want to take away your ability to vote or want to intimidate you out of voting. So if you want to be a part of the solution, just show up, make a plan, and help others make a plan to go vote. Don't get distracted by the disinformation. Vote, save America. Thanks so much for watching Misinformation. And if you like what you hear, subscribe to the Crooked Media channel. And if you hear about topics or you see misinformation out there in the wild, then put it in the comments and we'll cover it in another episode.